Okay, I'm very happy to have on the Goldstein on Gelt Show Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, who is the author of Triggers, Creating Behaviors That Last. In fact, he's the author of about 35 books and that have sold millions and millions of copies in 30 languages around the world. Marshall, as we start, just tell us, what are triggers?
As we journey through life, we're constantly bombarded by triggers. That's any stimulus that may impact our behavior. Could be sight, sound. Any stimulus that impacts our behavior is a trigger. Sometimes they push us in a direction that's consistent with where we want to go. Most of the time they don't. They throw us off course.
So would you say things like media is a trigger that throws us off course?
Could easily be media. In fact, media addiction, I wrote an article about that 20 years ago. I said it's going to pass drug addiction and alcohol addiction. It's a social problem, so I think we're already there.
I see. And certainly people using their phones to get some sort of media, it's true. One of the things that we found in the world of finance is that people get so addicted to what the media says about the stock market or interest rates or the bond doing this or that, that they end up making terrible decisions. Is that the type of problem that you see people having?
You know, I'm dealing more with the interpersonal domain. The number one problem, I ask parents to go ask your kid, how can I be a better parent? Number one comment is, don't do that in front of me. Don't use your cell phone while you're talking to me. So it's a huge problem in terms of interpersonal relationships, families, husband, wife, kids, that kind of stuff. Also, the average kid that's flunking out of school in the United States spends 55 hours a week on non-academic media. So it's an addiction.
I'm shocked. And I guess I shouldn't be shocked, but that's... and is that including television or...
Yeah. It's television, video, games, any non-academic media.
So, a lot of times people like to put the blame on media or social media or TV, and it kind of takes the blame off themselves. Everyone's always looking to blame someone else. How do you walk the thin line between saying, well, I really love my iPhone, and boy, I should just put it down and read a book?
I'm going to give your listeners 6 questions you can ask yourself every day. That'll help you have a better life and give you a little personal responsibility. And they all begin with, did I do my best to? Did I do my best to set clear goals, to make progress toward achieving my goals? Did I do my best to be happy? Did I do my best to find meaning? Did I do my best to build positive relationships? And did I do my best to be fully engaged? Ask yourself those questions every day. What's good about the questions is you can't really hide from did I do my best. You can't blame somebody else on that one.
I can feel the guilt welling up inside. Not me, of course, but all my listeners. All right.
Of course.
No, me as well. Doing my best is actually a real difficult thing. When you're trying to diet, for example, and something comes up and you end up ruining it. But even if we talk in terms of savings, how often have I heard someone say, oh, Doug, I mean to save $5,000 a month, but this month something came up, so I can't do it.
Yeah.
So let's say someone says, did I do my best at saving? And the answer is no. What do you recommend that he do next?
Well, what I recommend, I'm a great believer in measurement. I practice something called the daily question process every day. I pay a woman to call me on the phone every day. She listens to me read questions I wrote and provide answers I wrote every day. Somebody said, why do you do this? Don't you know the theory about how to change behavior? I wrote the theory. That's why I do it. It's hard. It's hard, right? It's hard for me. I got 11 million frequent flyer miles on one airline, right? It's not easy for me. That's an excuse to be a bad parent and a bad person, right? So why do I do it? My name is Marshall Goldsmith. I'm the world's leading executive coach. I'm too cowardly and undisciplined to do this by myself. I need help, and it's okay. So, I think we all need help. My advice is get somebody to follow up with you every day. Start measuring every day what you do towards savings. You'll be much more likely to do it. And get over this ridiculous deification of willpower. I have the willpower to do it on my own. Probably. If you had the willpower to do it on your own, it would have been done by now.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go back to the question of triggers, the topic of the book. How much do you think people are really governed by these outside triggers instead of, let's say, just making logical decisions?
Well, what happens is, if you look at life, there are four schools of philosophy on life. External control, internal control. Low means random chance. Life is a random walk. High external, low internal, as B.F. Skinner. We're totally dominated by triggers, and a lot of people believe that our entire life we're like the Pavlov dogs. We just run around responding to stimulus, and they're not idiots, by the way. A lot of smart people believe that. The other is the motivational speech. You know a book called The Secret? Anyway, it sold 7 million copies. Most ridiculous book ever written. It said, if I believe it will happen, right? And they interviewed people. They believed it would happen, and it did. Well, the reality is they didn't interview the dead people or the losers. They only interviewed the live people and the winners. I believe that, to a degree, I do control the world, and to a degree, the world is controlling me. And the more we're aware of how the world controls us, actually, we increase the odds on controlling ourselves. Because then we realize, yeah, I am subject to this stuff. I'm not better than everyone else. I'm not different than everyone else. And the same crap that everyone else has to deal with, so do I. Once you become aware of that, it's actually easier to deal with.
Mm-hmm. We're talking with Marshall Goldsmith, who wrote a fantastic book called Triggers, Creating Behavior That Lasts. Marshall, I got to tell you something. Some of the things you're saying actually sounds like what my father told me growing up, which was plan your day, work your plan, and work hard. So is this, what I fully respect what he said, certainly, and are you just kind of reframing that in a way that maybe people can understand today?
Yeah, and what I like is just adding probably another level of discipline. The only thing I would say is probably different than your father is he probably gave you more credit than I would give myself, in the sense that I think we tend to over-exaggerate willpower, over-exaggerate our own ability to do things. We're ashamed to need help and structure. And to me, getting over this shame of needing help, needing structure, once we get over that stuff, life gets a lot better. My friend Alan Mulally goes into Ford, and he tries to turn around the company. The stock was at $1, went to $18.40. So the first thing he does, he said, okay, top 16 leaders, 5 priorities each, red, yellow, green. Green on plan, yellow, not on plan, but got a strategy, and red, not on plan and lost. The first meeting, 16 times 5, 80 priorities, all green. Everyone's on plan, and they're losing $17 billion. So he said, no, I guess our plan is to lose $17 billion. Well, do it again. Finally, somebody said red. He stands up and applauds. He said, you're not on plan. You don't have a clue how to get there. He said, it's okay. He said, I'm the CEO. I know less than you do. That's okay, too. Let's work together and find somebody to help us and get the problem solved. Problem was solved in 10 minutes. He said that was the second that turned around the Ford Motor Company.
Mm-hmm. And that was admitting that there was a problem instead of everyone just kind of being involved and saying, oh, yeah, everything's okay. And
yeah. Or they have a problem.
Right.
No, they all agreed there was a problem. The problem was you. Not me, of course. The problem was somebody else, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, it's what you said about structure. One of the things I often find in terms of personal finance, and I think the value added that I bring, which is very hard to explain to people, is I just help them organize things. Like, I'll ask someone, tell me about your money and where it is. And shockingly, they'll frequently not know the right answer. And then they work with me. And this is not rocket science, Let's look at your bank accounts and your brokerage accounts and your IRAs and your pensions. And, after a couple of meetings, they go, oh, now I get it. And just having that organization. And I believe that people don't realize the value of organizing anything. And you're describing it at Ford's level, but I think it applies at,
Well, it's also true at I think it's true at the finance level. I'm not an expert at that. And I know it's true at the behavioral level. If you want to get better at anything, if you have clear structure, direction, measurement, you're much more likely to do it. And by the way, if you don't measure it, how do you know if you did it or not? Mm-hmm.
So I'm a believer. Let's give people a step, because we're nearing the end, and I want to give everyone a takeaway. Let's say you're struggling against a difficult circumstance. Let's use finance for the moment, right? You're having a hard time saving, or you spend a little bit more than you earn, and you want to change that habit. And you hear, your father, or your mother, your wife telling you, Jay, no, don't do it, but you can't. So what would be a good first step for someone like that to take in order to get out of the rut?
I'm going to give your listeners something that takes 2 minutes a day, costs nothing, help them get better at anything.
Okay.
And by the way, they're probably skeptical, thinking it sounds too good to be true. Half the people quit in 2 weeks.
Unbelievable.
Here's the strategy.
Why don't we just charge them for it, and then they'll think it's valuable? Okay.
Get out an Excel spreadsheet. On one column, write down whatever it is in life you want to work on. Could be money, finance, people, relationships, health. 7 boxes across, one for every day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Every question has to be answered with yes, no, or number. Yes is 1, no is a 0 or a number. Fill it out every day. At the end of the week, you get a report card. When you do that every day, you know what you learn? Life is so easy to talk and so hard to live. I've been doing this for years, and I can tell you it works. Mm-hmm. It'll help you get better at almost anything. Half the people quit in 2 weeks. It's painful to look in the mirror every day. Uh-huh. It works, but it's not easy.
Amazing. It's like that. I think they say the most successful weight loss program is this program people use called My Fitness app, and all you do is you just write down how many calories you eat every day and how much exercise you do.
That's it.
And just by recording it, you're so well. And the same thing, obviously, is with budgeting. I guess I'm not telling you something you don't know, but when people write it down, they know what they're doing.
I agree.
Yeah, fantastic advice. All right, Marshall, we are just about out of time, but in the last few seconds, just tell us, how can people follow you and follow your work?
Go to www.marshallgoldsmith.com. Marshall has 2 L's. Or send me an email, marshall@marshallgoldsmith.com. If you'd like to learn about any of my research daily question process, send me an email. I'm happy to send you stuff.
All right, listen, we really appreciate your spending the time. We will put a link to that at the show notes of today's show at goldsteinongelt.com. Marshall Goldsmith, thanks again.
Thank you very much.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt Show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world. If you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt Show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt Show.